to make sure we're in the right space. Today, we're going to talk about Teams and some of the automation functionalities within inside of Microsoft Teams. My goal whenever I do one of these presentations is to always make sure someone learns something. Okay, so that can be a little bit of nugget that you had no idea existed. For instance, a couple weeks ago, I told someone about the format painter in PowerPoint and their mind basically exploded, right? Or it can be something much bigger than that. So with that, as we take a look, my name is Pat Petersen. I'm a director. I work for an organization called RSM. RSM is a consulting, tax, and audit firm. We're number 5 in the big 4 list. So we're close, but not quite there. We focus in on the small and mid-sized businesses. So that's what we do. I'm on technology consulting. I'm a Microsoft certified trainer, have been for quite a few years overall. My organization lets me come do these things. That's why I have to say nice things about them. But if you do want to reach out or get in contact, feel free. My website's there, as well as Twitter, which I'd never go on anymore, but LinkedIn is better. All right. First of all, like any community event, these events would not be possible without our sponsors. So please make sure that you visit all of the sponsors and say thank you. Even if you already have another solution in place, it's always nice to find out what's next and what they're working on as well. All right. So here when we take a look, what we're going to talk about for us is a few different items. So we're going to go through the agenda, and then I'll talk about myself because I love talking about myself here. First things is we're going to talk through the challenges that come with automation, the challenges that come with working with others inside of our organization. We're also then going to look at the Updates app inside of Teams. Anyone use that? Well, good. The rest of you will learn. We just now have to get you one thing to learn. All right. Then we're going to touch and move into the Approvals app. The Approvals app has been there. Most of you have probably used to that, but we'll discuss some of the different tools you can use that with inside of Microsoft Teams. Then we'll touch on Power Automate. And then we'll open up for Q&A. But if you have questions at all throughout the process, please feel free to raise your hand, interrupt me, throw things at me, as long as they're dollar bills. That was inappropriate, and this is recorded. So awesome. And I kicked the thing. I kicked it. That's my bad. So here when we take a look, when we think about that, I love out-of-the-box technology. If we can do it out of the box, it's better than hiring a developer or coder. With that, obviously, blurring some of the lines of Power Automate with low code, which I think is a bunch of BS. It's all code anyways. You have to understand how it works. Just because it's easy to fill in the box doesn't make it not be a coding tool. Same thing with Copilot Studio, agents and building those. So I love those. I do own a 1975 AMC Pacer. If you're not familiar with what that is the car from Wayne's World. It is fawn beige, aka baby poop brown. In color, all original with 42,000 miles. And the best part about it is it's now summertime in Minneapolis, which means it gets to come out of the garage. Otherwise, it stays hibernating in the corner. With that, been involved in community stuff a lot. I'm from Minneapolis, grew up in Wisconsin, lifelong Packer fan. Any other Packer fans in here? Okay, a few of you. Anyone hate the Packers in here? Fair. You Bears fans then, or what? No, Saints, okay. All right, so let's talk through some of the challenges here. Oop, that went too fast. So we think there must be an automation there. Obviously. Let me fix that quick. I mean, if you knew me, you know that, oh, whatever. We'll just skip that. It's fine. Well, we'll go back. We'll just talk. What the heck is going on? I promise you, this is not normally me. Like, I can't even get back. Someone need to know how to help me with PowerPoint? Copilot will not know that. Don't fool yourself. All right, we're gonna just go to the transitions. Who did that, Pat? Okay, I think I'm good now. I think I'm good. If that's the only mistake I make today, we're in good shape, everyone. All right. Okay.
No.
What is going on? I'm glad you guys can all laugh at me. This has never happened to any of you though, right?
No.
Ever? Okay. I can't wait for those evals at the end. What just happened? What's it doing? I don't think I have I don't have anything plugged in. I don't have my mouse is here. I'm not touching it. I got a new computer a couple weeks ago, so that probably did it. I don't know, whatever. We'll be fine. We can just present from like the boring view too. Okay. I don't know what's going on. Apologies. All right, we're just gonna go old school. This is like my biggest pet peeve when I'm in a Teams meeting though and people do this. So, all right. Okay, that big enough?
No, one thing is another.
We're going to duplicate, and we're just going to be done.
Yep.
And I got other slide decks that open up. All right, we're good.
We're good.
Should we start back over?
Yeah.
Did you pause the recording for that, or is that all recorded? You were supposed to know that. All right. So when we think about automation in general, right? So not only with inside of teams, but just automation in general, some of these IT challenges we see probably apply to other things than just automation. They apply to Copilot, they apply to AI altogether. I think the key thing here is I take a look at a few of these, and we're not going to talk about each of them individually. But if I think about the IT and business partnership down at the bottom, that's probably the key that's important, right? Business processes cannot work if IT's not on board and the business are working together. And if you think about IT in the last 10, 15, 20 years, it used to be in the basement, right? And now IT is becoming more part of the business. And with that, that's going to help drive some of these pieces. The other one, I think, is in the upper right-hand corner, the change in workforce, the expectations. People go to conferences, they go golfing, they have friends, they have buddies, they hear all of these neat things that are possible with the technology tools, and then they come and then they want to actually deploy those, or they come and they want to actually make sure that organizations or their organizations are taking advantage of it. My wife works for a family-owned cookware manufacturer. They make the bunt pan, if you have one of those at home. She gets all of her ideas when she's working at home and I'm working at home, and she hears me talk about all these neat tools, and then she goes to her IT person and they're like, no, we're not doing that, right? Challenge, IT business partnership. Also, the expectations are there. The other item I think that's interesting is I used to laugh like 2 years ago. I put paper processes on this and I've revamped the deck since then. And I had taken it off. And I actually just put paper processes back on because what I'm seeing is that when organizations hear about AI and they hear all these tools, what they really want is automation. They sit back and they say, we want to take our invoices and we want to make them go through an approval process. And you're like, bro, that's not AI. That's simply automation. And you could have done that 15 years ago, right? What's gotten better is the intelligent capture. It's one of those days. So I can't blame myself for the reason why the slides advanced. I can blame the room a little bit. So I think that's key. The other item I think on here is kind of the one that's left there is the bottom, kind of the developer supply falling behind. I don't think it's the supply falling behind. There's developers everywhere. I think people get bored doing the same thing. How many of you are doing the exact same job you did 5 years ago? You pick up new tools. You pick up new technology, right? If you were an Exchange admin before, now you're a group admin. Maybe you're dabbling in Teams. Maybe you're now a voice admin on top of it, right? You pick up additional tools and additional technologies. So I would say it's less on the developers are like, we don't have as many. It's more on the fact of there's more technology. There's more things to know. There's more things to do, and people get bored easier. Right? If you look at the way of you capturing people, you don't generally sit through an hour-long YouTube video to learn something. You'll look at it, and if it doesn't answer your question in the first 30 seconds, you're moving on to the next one. I think we can thank all of the social media tools for that. All right, so when we think about that, I did hide that slide, so we're going to move past it. When we think about it, I think there's three main topics we're going to touch on here today. One is how do we digitize manual processes? Then we'll look at gaining operational visibility. And then the last one is how do we make sure that we're dynamic in terms of our environment? So how do we make sure we adjust? So when we think about digitizing manual processes, we all have manual processes today. One of the ones that I have, kind of think about is whenever you walk into a bank or a credit union, there is so much paper. That has gotten a lot better. For instance, when I refinanced my house, this would have been like 10 years ago, I think I signed a booklet, a binder that was this thick. When we just purchased a new home this last summer, it was 99% electronic. I read every single word of all of those documents, of course, and got annoyed when I had to go back to the middle because I missed a box to check that says I read this. But when we think about that, right, the challenges here is that it's manual, it's inefficient. A lot of our processes before COVID were built on sneaker traffic. You all know what sneaker traffic is? If you don't know it, and I have to explain this because as new generations come on board, they don't understand the value of the manila envelope with the little string that you made into an 8. Remember that? I was a teacher for some time, so I got really good at the interdepartment mail. The other item is all of our tools are siloed. They never work together. I laugh about this. This was about 10 years ago or so. I was working with an organization, and I remember it because I met with their onboarding department. They were a bank that had, probably like 800 employees, so not small. They had an onboarding team, and the lady goes, Pat, I have to tell you, I don't think there's anything you can do in automation for us. Everything's automated. And I was like, really, Kathy? I don't know what her name was anymore. What do you mean automated? She goes, well, the email comes in and then we print it out and then we send it to the IT team so they can do what they need to do. And I said, well, how do you know where it's at in the process? She goes, well, we just don't know when we do it. So IT does it on Wednesdays. So it's automated on Wednesdays. And I was like, I don't think we understand the process, right? So that's a manual process. The other item is the integration. And that's one thing that I'm most excited about. As we take a look at how Power Automate's grown over the last 5 years or so, moving into Copilot Studio agents and how that's grown, the integration points are insane. You do not have to write custom code to make the integration work. You have to understand how that integration works, which is key. So those are some of the challenges. So when we think about how we can become more efficient, one of them is obviously utilizing templates. So making sure that we're using something that's already out there. If you don't have a center of excellence for your organization or at least a monthly user group, lunch and learn, where you can share details and information, you probably have people in the organization that are doing the same thing and they're building them separate. Why not bring that together to allow for some efficiencies to be gained there? When we think about the one, down here, the conversational chatbots. In addition to working with organizations and better utilizing Microsoft 365 tools, one of my other roles is focused in on contact center development. So tomorrow I'm actually doing a talk on Copilot Studio voice-enabled bots, specifically inside of the Dynamics Contact Center. When we think about that overall, we as humans are becoming more comfortable interacting with AI. Whether that's when we call in, whether that's when you go through a drive-through, and that initial greeting is AI now. I know this because I went through the Taco Bell drive-through about 2 weeks ago and it was an AI voice talking to me. And I know this because it wasn't the same voice as the person working, and it was much more polished than any other time I've gone through the drive-thru. And it was very simple and clean. And I liked it because it worked. Automations, if they work, AI, if they work, people want to adapt and use them. The other thing to think about is the one-stop shop for all of your applications. This is where Microsoft did it right by having Teams bring everything into one. You don't have to leave it. And now with the new calendar experience, I only go into Outlook to actually do email now. Otherwise, I can stay in Teams for everything else that I need to do. All right, when we think about operational efficiency, this one I think is important here is that when we think about our operational efficiency, going back to the tools being siloed, we sometimes don't have the ability to see how they all work together, right? We don't have the ability to pass that data from one to the other, or that passing of data is very kludgy, very hard to use. So when we think about that, the multiple systems, teams, locations, that's very, very difficult to make that work. So when we think about how we can use automation to help with that, how do we use digital paper content? There's a tool out there that Microsoft has, and there's other third-party tools out there that can actually go and scrub your data based upon the modeling you built. SharePoint Syntax is Microsoft's tool, and there's Knowledge Lake and a handful of other competitors out there as well. What I like about SharePoint Syntax is it's very easy to pick up and start doing. Yes, it costs cents per minute there, but I am actively working with a client today that has this as their process. So they came wanting artificial intelligence to solve this problem. I'm going to share their manual process today, and you're going to be like, there's organizations still doing that? Yes, big organizations. They run a bunch of different companies in multiple different states. They have a variety of different tax paperwork that gets mailed to them on a monthly basis, right? All official communication comes through the mail. They have somebody actually go and scan every piece of paper in when it gets received. You're like, that's how I would do it. That's great, right? Everyone works remote. She puts them into a folder in a network drive. Then she opens up an Excel spreadsheet, true story, and then types in column A what the letter was about, in column B who's it's assigned to, and in column C, if I'm up to C now, basically the due date, okay? And they think AI is going to solve this. What they really need is they just need an automated way to take that document, scan the document, extract the information, and build out her spreadsheet for her. And also make sure that people are assigned tasks so they actually do their work. Because what people aren't doing is they're not looking at the Excel spreadsheet because no one looks at Excel and wants to actually do anything out of it. So when we think about those processes, you have to think about, okay, where is the actual problem? One of the problems with that process, to be honest with you, is the person involved. She does not want to change. She is worried for her job because it is at least 15 hours a week she is doing this part. And all of you in this room probably know you could automate that and maybe not 100% take it. There's still some validation, right? We want to make sure it's from the state of Illinois and the correct county, and you have to train the models because not all the documents are quite the same. There's some differences there. But really, you could get through this relatively simple with those tools. So obviously, that's one piece there. The next thing when we think about being flexible in dynamic environments overall, I think this is probably the key piece to think about is the way we used to do things is not the way that works today. And what I mean by that is we used to do physical or wet signatures on everything. Then the world is now fine with DocuSign, Adobe Sign, SharePoint Sign, whatever signature tool you want to use now, NextSign. I think now if somebody's like sending me a document and I know it's coming, I'm like, yeah, I'll sign it. I have no idea if it's the right tool or not anymore because there's more than one. It's more than DocuSign out there. The other item here I think that's important is customer satisfaction. When we think about customer satisfaction, I want to say that means a couple different things. How many of you would say are pure IT people, meaning you're a global admin, you're a systems administrator, you work in the IT department? How many of you work with the business? Okay. How many of you work with outside, like when we hear, customer satisfaction, you work with your business's customers? A few of you. Okay. I think the key thing there is when I say customer satisfaction, I'm actually referring to the organization. IT is and should be or their job should be serving the customers, which is the organization, right? So if you're not having those conversations with them, I would encourage you to do that. So that's from the dynamics perspective, or dynamic environment rather. All right. So let's move into some demos. Hopefully my demos go way better and you forget about this PowerPoint disaster for it. I'm going to figure this thing out. When we think about it, Updates app, there's only a few of you that knew about the Updates app, so we're going to take a second to talk through it. The Updates app in my mind, I'll be honest with you, I was a huge fan of the Updates app, and then there was a group that was in charge of reviewing government efficiency that then sent out an email to everyone asking what they did last week. And then I was like, is that what the Updates app really is? Right? Like that was in my mind. And then I took a step back and I said, nope, it's not, because the Updates app, we can be more timely, we can ask specific questions, and we can be targeted. And I wanted to share that with you because I think it's important that the world is going on and there's other data that people are hearing, and they might feel like someone's coming for their jobs if all of a sudden it's pinging them and asking them for an update here, or it's asking them to tell me what they're going to do for the week as well. So when we think about the Updates app overall, the Updates app is a central tool that's available within inside of Teams that allows you to generate Microsoft forms to collect updates. Those can be customized. You can use them for project status. You can use them for check-ins. You can use them for one-on-one. You could set it up to say, send it to somebody every single week at a specific time. When I talk to our project managers, the biggest complaint they say is that people don't get back to them. We all know the noise of Teams notifications. In fact, I put myself on Do Not Disturb, and I can just imagine what's going on right now. And it's like FOMO almost to a point of like, what am I missing? Nothing, really, nothing. The world will go on. So the Updates app is really a key one there. They can be individual or they can be team-based. We use them internally for our team-based. But when I think about it, project managers, good use case for them. IT, check-in on if you're rolling out an update somewhere. Think about the times that you've had to roll out a new update or something's changing on the IT side and you're like, that was dramatic. Think about the times you've rolled out a new tool and you hear nothing back. And you're like, I guess no news is good news. Most of the time that's the case. But the Updates app is a really good way for you to be able to go ahead and pull that information as well. So let's take a look at the Updates app overall here for us. All right, so we're going to go into Teams here. I'm in a demo environment, so we are good. All right, so there's the Updates app. I have one update built in this demo environment. It's my family demo, so I could ask my wife like what we're doing for dinner or something. So when we think about this overall, as we come in here to the Updates app, there's a few pieces to think about. Obviously, there's a handful of different templates there. So as I take a look at the templates, there's daily updates, there's program updates, there's a location check-in. How many of you are going back to the office now periodically? Couple hybrid. Anyone in the office 5 days a week, all day, every day? You're not, Chris. Anyone totally flipped. I was in the office every day before COVID, 100%. That was me. And then COVID happened and I was forced to learn how to work from home. And now I don't want to go work in the office because I love working at home and I actually feel like I get more done. But obviously there's some of those pieces there too. But if we want to pretend that we're on the sales side here overall, we can go ahead and do a monthly sales forecast. So I just went and selected a few of those items. So when we think about this, this is all built with Microsoft Forms in mind. So if you're used to Microsoft Forms, you're not learning anything new. The automation behind the scenes is the scheduling, the alerting, the tracking it down, the ability for you to say, I haven't heard from everyone. Please send them a reminder, right? That whole nudging thing that we talked about during the keynote about having that facilitator agent actually go and nudge and get that person. Imagine in the future that it's just going to keep looking and say, hey, Pat hasn't done this. Pat hasn't done this. Pat hasn't done this. And then it will eventually, the nagging is eventually there. And then I worry that, and Chris mentioned this to me earlier, I worry that all we've done now is essentially just build automation to try to solve for our human deficiencies, like solve the actual problem. But here's where we have this. So here's our monthly sales forecast. I can obviously, whether I want to require that, it's all Microsoft Forms based overall. Over here on the right-hand side, I can say, who do I want to submit it? Name, email, or team. So in this case, just for time today, I'm just going to go ahead and put myself in there. There's the family. We'll pick my wife, that's fine. So who can view the submissions? I'll put myself there too, so we actually see more. All right, so we have 2 submissions. That means 2 people can submit. We have the specific folks down at the bottom on who can view those. Now, when you think about who can view or who can manage the requests, the key thing I think that's important here is that not only does it have to just be the person who created it, but you can also expand it out and you can add others to that. So imagine when you are on vacation, or when someone else needs to take over or ask questions of, did we hear from that person yet? You can add multiple people there, which is really valuable. And then here's the due date. When do you want it to be done? Is it a one-time thing? Is it every single weekday? Is it daily, weekly, monthly, whatever the case may be? Are we going to request items overall? And can they change that? So I went ahead and I clicked on publish. Again, here we go. There's my form. There we go. It automatically sent me an update because I said, Pat, send Pat an update. So here's the update. I can obviously see that information overall, so I can actually take that and come back to that. Let me just jump into updates here real quickly. I'm going to go back to the home page. So I did one earlier today called weekly update, right? So here's my week. I think I did weekly update. No, one-to-one here. So I did a one-on-one preparation. Anyone manage people in here? Keeping track of what they want to talk about is one of the most difficult things to do. And we can say that you can, automate this. You can make sure you check in with them. It's certainly there. You can use Microsoft To Do with a shared task board. There's a bunch of different ways to do it. But ultimately, if you don't meet with the people on a regular basis, then you may not have something to talk about, right? Because you don't know what they're working on. You don't know how you can help them, or even managing up is important. So here I just use the out-of-the-box one-to-one preparation. And here you can see the response, right? I didn't put anything in challenges because I have no challenges. I'm an expert right now. So up here, what agenda items? I use Copilot. How do you know I use Copilot? Because everything's in 3s. I will never trust a bulleted list that's in 3s again. You cannot fool me. Everything is in 3s. Now you see it, you'll never be able to not see it again. It always comes back in 3s. Modify your prompts to say, come back in 5s. Just saying. Yeah. Then you can delete one if it doesn't match. So here's obviously items that are there. Now imagine that if I'm going to go into my one-on-ones and maybe I supervise 15, 20 folks, right? And there's a lot of people. I now have the ability to very quick and easily open this up, see what they said, and be timely. I also have record to go back and say, oh, we didn't get to that from last time as well. So updates is a really neat tool that can allow you to collect the data overall. It is automated all within inside of Microsoft Teams. And if I come back out to the home page here, you can see that my daughter Olivia has not sent hers in yet. She's a busy 14-year-old causing trouble. But if I want, I can say send a reminder, choose her, and then obviously say send a reminder, and now it's going to alert her. Hopefully she's not logged into Teams on her phone, but if she is, she'll have it silenced like all good kids do. Updates. What do we think? We're going to try them? Anyone have a use for them that they thought of, like sitting here, they're like, light bulb on, this is how I'm going to use updates? Yeah. You got some? You want to share? Yeah, so that weekly update is key. We use it internally in our organization for a weekly kind of check-in forecasting piece. We do ours on Monday morning that triggers an alert, looks at it. But yeah, you could do it as a weekly summary as well that, Fridays at 3 o'clock or whenever it is. You do have the ability to trigger the alert specifically. If you don't like how structured this is, you could build your own automation on top of it, right? You could make it be a little bit different of sending an adaptive card or sending a form at a specific date and time on there. But again, I like how easy it is to quickly deploy approvals, or updates rather, not approvals. We're going to talk about approvals next. All right. Yeah.
Where does the data live that drives this thing? Like, if we want to farm it out for analysis.
The data itself is all live within inside of the form. So the form itself that's underneath. So what it does specifically is it's underneath the person who created it, and it's all the form information that's there. So if you were going to look at making this be more than just quick check-ins or quick updates from that side of it, then you'd want to look at more developed, more mature type of solution where you're building a form and then using Power Automate with a service account. A form tied to a group, I should say, and then a Power Automate with a service account, so that way it's not owned by a specific person. Yep. Something like a one-on-one check-ins, your boss's updates, it's all done through email. I don't think this isn't the solution that's going to be one that's going to grow into an enterprise-like solution, right? You're going to hit those guardrails. And so that's, I think real quickly you could see it. But again, it's better to have something than nothing. So for those of you that are like, well, it doesn't quite do what I want. Remember, Microsoft builds tools for the 80% of the use cases. Have you ever had this where you're like, why doesn't it do this? Well, you're one of those 20%, right? So think about that. All right. Any other comments on updates? Otherwise, we'll move into approvals. All right. Do we go back into the PowerPoint? We try. All right. Approvals. So when we think about approvals, we have a lot of approvals to manage. One of my things I always used to say about SharePoint specifically is that SharePoint's strength is how customizable it is. It's also SharePoint's weakness at how customizable it is. The same thing goes with the approval process, or more specifically, automation within inside of Microsoft. I see IT updates, time off requests, those types of items overall. If there's a system where that workflow should belong, it should belong in that system. How many of you work in an organization of less than 100 people? Okay, you probably have a little bit more flexibility, right? Because you don't have that structured tools. How many of you work in an organization of 5,000 people or more? A few of you, right? That does mean that you don't have as much control over some of those, and that IT asset type of piece might be part of ServiceNow or might be part of your service catalog, specifically where it doesn't belong there. So there's something to make mention as we're going through this. This works for most, but again, you may have a tool where you want it to be a little bit different. All right. So when we think about approvals, how many of you have used the Approvals app or currently use the Approvals app? I bet it's one of these cords that I step on. Use the Approvals app within inside of Teams. Few of you do. How many of you have never used it before? There we go. We'll get you. All right. So when we think about the Approvals app inside of Teams, there's really three main things that come with it. One is it helps obviously streamline the process. It can allow you to digitize your workflow. And there's a tracking piece there. Back to the question on updates. How do we make sure that we can audit, see the data, analyze the data, those types of pieces? You have to be careful about using the approvals app in that manner. I would recommend if you think you need to have the data serviceable, be able to go back and audit it, make it be part of an organization or department process versus an individual process, you're going to want to look at a Power Automate with some approval process built in. Okay. The nice thing about it is that approvals app is the same. You can leverage that approvals app in Power Automate, so that way the alerts all come directly to people inside of Microsoft Teams. This used to be a really good idea when not everyone was on Teams and it wasn't as like alert city happening. Now that there's a lot more alerts, I do wonder if we're going to see that kind of back out a little bit, and maybe it's going to be email for approvals and that type of stuff just to get it out of the everyday where it can get lost. All right, let's take a look at the approval process, or approvals, I should say. So just like updates, there is an app out there for you. All right. So here's my handful ones that are available. So you can see that I have, a few pieces there. These are all of my approvals that are assigned to Pat Petersen. Okay. You can see on the bottom that there's a handful that have been approved going back quite a few years. You can see that I have one second from the top that's labeled as new business card. And then I have one right above it, which is Comms V Next approval, which is requested. That's for our Power Automate that I'm going to go into after this. Okay. How many of you still have business cards? I laughed. That's a template one, by the way. I was like, that's fun. During COVID, we moved floors of our offices. Our main was on 11 and now it's on 12 in Minneapolis. So they reissued business cards and I got it. And I was like, but I still have a box of 500 of the previous floor. Like, does it really matter? Anyways, would not want to be in the business card printing business. All right. So this is the approvals. Here you can also see on the left-hand side, we have, Adobe Sign, DocuSign, SharePoint, e-signature here as well. And then if you do have organizational ability here, you can also jump into the template management side so you can create templates overall. And so here you can see obviously, items there that are coming from different groups. So here you see different groups overall or teams, family, deployment team, SharePoint, some demo items there. Or I can create org-wide ones because I'm a global admin on this account. So with that, I'll just go ahead and create a new template just so you can see it. There's that business card one that popped up, but as you can see, there's a handful of different templates already out there. I'm going to do a business trip because we all traveled to be here of some way. Here's the form. That looks amazing overall. And now I can choose, since I have the ability, I can choose who do I want to publish it to. I'm going to choose to publish it org-wide. And here's where we can start to see some of the information, the basic settings, the form design. If I wanted to add questions in there, I could. I got to wait for the next to come up. Bueller. Anyone have a quarter? So I used to do this when I did training full time. I would say spin your mouse clockwise and that makes it go faster. It doesn't really at all. But see how that worked? See how that worked? All right. So here's my form. I'm not going to risk making any changes to it. And we'll go ahead and click on next. Here's where you can see some of the workflow settings. Do I want to collect, how do I want to collect responses? I can do that if there's comments that are required. But we'll just go ahead and preview that. We'll publish this out. So now I have my templates available, right? I created that template available for it. Now you could simply go and start that for a form, build some process. If I think back to what it used to look like before, it was a piece of paper that somebody would print out or somewhat manually fill in to get approval. Now it's probably all done in email. A lot of you are probably just doing it in email in the body of an email from an approval process overall. And then you're maintaining it. So now that I have that set up here overall, here we can obviously come back and modify that as well. So I'll get out of the template management portion of it. All right. So now I can come in here to my new approval request. So I clicked on the new approval request. So if I'm a user within the organization, I can come in here and very quickly and easily say, I need to get approval to travel. And since I published that template org-wide, I have the ability to come in here and choose business trip. And so I can obviously enter in the information. Just for ease sake, I'm going to go ahead and assign this to myself for approval. Don't never know why I'm not the first to come up. There's the thing. Oh, I got to choose the dates. We're going to go tomorrow, last minute business trip. Oops, the wrong date there. We got to go. And you saw we could customize that. Planes, trains, or automobiles. We're going to do other round trip. I'm going to send it. Now, I did send this to myself. So what you're going to see in a matter of a second or two, you're going to see that approval come through as well on my screen or ask. There we go. Pat sent Pat an approval. So with that, I can obviously jump in to my approvals. I can see there's the one up there. Obviously, I should have probably standardized that form from a time perspective. Not available there. So here I can see that information. I can enter in specific comments. If I want to delegate that, I could obviously reassign it to somebody else. I can cancel it, but otherwise I'll click approve. And now Pat's been approved to travel. I probably would want to ask how much money that's going to cost. But again, with that, very quickly and easily, you can build those processes. Now you may be saying, that's great, but how do we make it to log somewhere else, right? That's where you want to move into maybe more of a Power Automate type of scale for it. But this might get your head going of like, we have some very manual processes and some of them can be done with this. Some of them may not be. So when I think about new business cards, maybe it's not an approval component. Maybe it's like, yes, we ordered you new business cards. Complete, final. We're done. Very simple 3-state type of workflow. All right. Anyone have any ideas for the approvals process that they may start to use in their organization? No one? You guys all have very structured approval process already today?
You're out and you're an approver. How do you automate or set an out of office that forces the approval on someone?
That's where you'd have to, they were talking about it coming in here, but I don't think it's in here yet. I don't think it's in here. They were talking about the ability for you to do that, but that's where you'd use Power Automate to help do that if you had to worry about that type of stuff. Yeah.
We're using Power Apps for approval, like for leave request or if you have to submit an budget approval. So Power App also.
So you're using Power Apps specifically to help with that process. And then from the approval, are you using is it coming in here from an approvals or totally different? Okay. Yep. Yeah. I think when you look at some of these out of the box tools like updates and approvals overall, they can help you get somewhere. But if you need something a little bit more complicated, you have to look at a different tool, right? So Power Apps, Power Automate are all obviously tools that can be used. All right, let's switch into the automation piece of it here next. All right, so when you think about automation, I love this. I think it's important to automate before AI, okay? So when we think about what that means, it means that not everyone needs, we don't all need AI everywhere. AI is not going to solve every single one of our problems, but if we have a structured process today that's manual can be defined as something that's a piece of paper. It can be something that's email driven. It could be a SharePoint list that you look at and there's just no alerts or triggering off of that. Somebody goes and manually monitoring it. So I think it's automate before AI. I think it's important just to think about where you're at from an organization approach too. So when we think about Power Automate, how many of you have built a flow in Power Automate already? Not you guys are all experts. You just call it quits and go to lunch. So when we think about building flows in Power Automate, obviously it's the idea of building repetitive tasks. My biggest worry about Power Automate in the term citizen developer or low code is Microsoft Access databases. Anyone remember those? What was the biggest problem with those? They were a snowball at the top of the hill, and as they got going, they got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and then eventually they come crashing down, and when it crashes down, the person who built it is no longer with the organization. And then someone's having to try and figure out why it was set up that way. That's my biggest worry with automations as well inside of Power Automate. And in fact, we've seen a few organizations that we've supported through the process of where somebody leaves and all of that knowledge goes as well. So something to think about for it is to make sure that you're documenting, you're understanding all those processes. What I like about it is it can integrate with inside of Microsoft Teams. It can integrate with inside of SharePoint, Word, Excel, all of your Office tools it can do. It also can work, outside of the Microsoft suite as well. When a user creates an automated flow, they can do that with inside of Microsoft Teams, or they can do that with inside of the Power Automate type of environment. Typically, we recommend going to the environment overall. So key concepts, 3 main things you need to think about. Trigger. What's the event that's starting the actual action? Is it a form submission? Is it a Teams message getting sent? What are you going to happen? That's the actions. And then the conditional logic. And if anyone have gone ahead and built a Copilot Studio agent or bot, you're going to recognize very similar pieces there. The only difference you see added in there is the idea of topics to actually redirect. So it's not just one big workflow anymore. All right, so when we think about creating them within inside of Teams, some of my favorite items is obviously sending notifications to Teams channels, tagging folks. I also think it's important for you to think about the way that you can automate some of the ways you post. You can also then do that if somebody sends you a Teams message, you can very quickly use an automation to do something with it. So a personal gain as well. I'll show that here in just a moment. And then of course, it's faster, right? It's quicker than having to copy and paste those pieces overall. All right. Let's get into the demo here overall for us. So first things here, I'm going to come into just a chat that I have here for us. Here's where you can see a few different items. So down at the very bottom, I have my more actions here. I guess I can't do that for myself. Let me jump into, I don't know what my wife has sent me recently. Oh, I had to pick up coffee for her. That's a great one. There's my guest information so I can there we go, we'll use that. All right. So here when I come into more actions down at the very bottom, you'll notice there's a handful of different pieces there for us. Has anyone used these before? This is a way of taking an ask and turning it into a task. Really quick and easy. So if you ever get a bunch of stuff in Microsoft Teams and you're like, I need to remember to do that. I need to flag it for follow-up. There's no flagging here. So you can very easily and quickly, obviously you can see a handful of different items built in there, but I have the ability to obviously some workflows that are built in here for. But if I come in and choose a new action, this is where I can choose what do I want to have happen with it. So I can choose to follow up on a message. I can schedule a meeting. I can schedule a reply. I can integrate with Trello to do. I can send a message somewhere else. I can share a message on Twitter. Don't know why you'd ever do that, but I guess you could. I'd just take a screen grab if I was doing that, I think. But think about the ways that you can use this, right? So this is one. I have one built in my underneath my production side where I use it to help keep track of all my asks. So if somebody's like, Pat, can you work on this? I'm not going to remember that in 2 days. So I actually go in and I flag it and say, create a task for me. And that creates a task, and then I can follow it up as well overall. So that's one way of doing a personal type of piece. But let's navigate out, and let's navigate directly to Power Automate here for us. So in Power Automate, I have a very simple flow built just from a time perspective here overall. It's for a, I think I have it as just like a team creation mock-up type of thing. There's 2 questions, not enough. But here you can see the first action that's up there is the idea of when a response is submitted, right? So when somebody fills out the form, go and do something with that. The other piece that I have here is I create a profile, and then you'll notice the concept here of creating an adaptive card with inside of a chat or channel. Has anyone played around with adaptive cards before? A few of you have. If you want to impress your boss, build an adaptive card. Because the minute that they get a message from Microsoft Teams that says fill this in, they're like, whoa, that's crazy. I would recommend, if you haven't looked at that, I actually have I think I have a video on my blog of walking through the adaptive card process. We don't have time today. We could have an entire hour session on adaptive cards. But when we think about an adaptive card, if you're not familiar with what that is, that's a post from a bot or from somebody that is going to collect more information. So imagine that the scenario that comes to mind all the time for me is imagine a process that goes to a shared mailbox. And when it goes to a shared mailbox or a Microsoft 365 group, it sits there. And then someone replies. But there's no track of what was the message about. Do we need to follow up again in 10 days? Right? There's none of that piece. Email is really, really bad at keeping track of it. Imagine taking that email and saying that email goes and automatically triggers an adaptive card in Teams. Allows the person to read the body of the email. They can put in the response. They then have different questions on how to categorize that. Do we need to follow up? Yes. What's the information about? And they can choose a specific topic. That can then all be logged to a SharePoint list, but then it also can send that email out as well, simultaneously. So again, you're keeping users inside of Microsoft Teams. You don't have to be a member of that shared mailbox in order to respond to that anymore, because again, you're using that automation to do that. You probably want to be careful with that, but hopefully you get the idea that it's possible overall. Here you can see then I am just running through a test overall, so it's waiting for that approval process for it. So let's go ahead and let's fill this one out just so you can see it. A very simple form, team name, comms v next 2025-2. I'm going to be the owner. Again, if you were going to do this for a team request process, you'd want more fields than this. But for demo purposes, it's great. So now that we come through, obviously there's a few things that's going to happen. One of them that's going to come in here real quick. You heard a few dings as well. There's the workflow. This is an adaptive card. The simplest of kind of an adaptive card. These are adaptive cards here for you. You can customize those. You can make those, change those, do whatever you want to do with them. Collect data, embed images, embed videos. A lot of different things you can do with that. In fact, one of the most powerful pieces that I've started to see is a Copilot chat public bot on a website actually surfacing that data as Teams adaptive cards, and that's how that interaction is starting to work. There are some gotchas there on the adaptive card piece of it. So if you go start programming it, you'll figure it out real quick. But I do have it all documented. I had to figure it out late one night. Here we go. I can just go ahead and click approve here. And again, now I can choose to submit. What you'd want to do then, if you wanted to capture any of that information, you want to write that to a SharePoint list or whatever the case may be for tracking purposes afterwards. But again, that workflow, if I come back to that workflow now, it should all of a sudden say that the approval is complete overall. And again, I don't have any actions after it, but you could build a lot more there. Again, we're keeping that within inside of the flow of Microsoft Teams, so users aren't having to leave Microsoft Teams to interact or to work on or to approve a specific piece. All right. Did everyone learn something today? Anyone not? You can be honest, and I guarantee you I got a nugget I can give you. Okay. With that, apologies for my technical difficulties with the projector on cue, as well as he was saying it was happening last session too, guys. So that's the projector. The animations on my slides I swear I removed those. But with that, I appreciate you all coming out today as we talk through updates, approvals, and automation overall. If you have any questions, I'm happy to take them now. Otherwise, feel free to stick around. Again, lunch, I think I heard, is down where the keynote was this morning. So you got a little bit of a walk to get down there. But thank you all for coming.